Okay, for today's video, I wanted to kind of fulfill a request that I had, and I've had a couple of these actually, just to start on cutting the decal sheet that comes from Pato. So I've already built the car. You know, this Xfinity Toyota Camry that I'm going to make into this Kyle Busch 2016 NOS car. So, you know, like I said, this is already built, so set that aside for now. And now I have this front, or this decal set. So already I can see a couple things that are going to be challenging, right? So this piece across this front here is a challenge to get just right as you lay that across the front grille. But you know, usually I just start cutting at the bottom here. I can see I already have the Xfinity logo on the windshield, so I don't need that. And I don't need these black lines across here because I'm going to be, you know, painting them. So I'll just cut right through that logo. And here, let me try to get this camera a little bit up a little bit so you guys can see as I cut. And I'm just trying to cut as close as possible without getting, you know, obviously onto the decal. And I use these little baby scissors. You know, really, I think they're like a elementary school type scissors, but they're sharp and they're small and they work great. I'm trying to cut also. If you see like these lines on the roof here, I don't really want these lines here, so I'm cutting as close as I can to the decal so that they don't show up. What's outside the decal, of course. Then here for the ones, I typically just kind of cut straight down this way. If it's really pronounced, you know, I will sometimes just cut into here, and I'll do it here just to show you. But it's not really that big of a deal. Like that. Now we do have this. I do need both of these. This decal for the back part because I don't have the name on the donor car. So let's just cut this out. So this I already know is too big to stretch across, so I trim a little bit of it already. I'll have to trim it some more. And this says drinknos.com, okay? I have to tell you guys, as I'm cutting these up, I have not had a high fructose corn syrup drink in a month. I am trying. I watched some videos on high fructose corn syrup, and I guess they kind of scared me straight. So, you know, I'm getting up there in years, and I want to be around, you know what I mean? And so I'm trying to do a little bit of a better job watching what I eat, watching what I drink. And it's never too late, I guess, to start doing that. So I'm trying to cut out the sugar drinks, as difficult as that is. So you can see how big this is, right? I got this raised area here, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it as close as I can to these little circles. Like so. I guess these little circles are access points to various changes to the suspension that they can make. So that'll work right there. Now, if you can see this, there's a little bit of decal that I didn't cut off, so I'm going to trim that off because sometimes it can show up as white. I don't want any white, so I'm going to trim it as close as I can to the black with saving the black. And this can be a hard thing to do sometimes. That was just a little tiny piece off of there. Probably should have done this to start with because I've done this before, but it's just a little bit of a pain to try to keep it straight. So I'm just going to cut, and I'm going to do as much as I can as long as this video runs. So I'll dip a few of these things in the water here. Alright, so sometimes then I'll take this side and I'll just kind of work my way down the side here. I'm not going to need any of that stuff there. Cut along here. I'm suspecting there's some white around that black there. So now across this top here of this hood, I'm going to try to save that center black decal. So this one right here. So what I'm going to do is I don't really care about that other stuff. But if this top area where the cowl is, if it's pronounced, I'll keep it. If it's not, I'll just not use any of it. So I'll use that right there. I didn't get a whole lot of water here. I like to really saturate the decals. Make sure that they're really wet. Some people just like to use just a little bit of water. I like to use a lot. Alright, so this will be just kind of cut down this way. And kind of do it like that. Now, I also don't like these hood pins if they don't line up. So, well, it looks like they might line up. Maybe not. They're close. Yeah, they're close, but they don't line up. So I'm going to cut them out. So let's do this here. It's going to kind of cut up in there. Cut up in here. I don't really like to pull, but sometimes it's really close. I can pull. Okay. It's a little bit here. can see that little line there. I want to cut that out. I want that showing through. Oh, I didn't say this, but I wash my hands with Dawn soap right before doing this. I keep saying that, but it's amazing. Just the oils that your body generates, and in a very short order. So right before I'm getting into, decaling a car, just handling the car and doing decals, I definitely like to wash my hands. I did it right before the start of the video. It's very important. If you don't like smudges, things like that, because that's exactly what your fingerprints do when they're unwashed. It's a very clean hobby. Or at least I try to keep it that way. So I don't use this little piece here. And I'm just going to go along the line here for this. And I'm just kind of trimming the outside here. And we'll set that aside for now. Okay. All right, so let's cut this. Cutting right along the edge of this stuff. Like I said, I try to make the nose most important part of the car to get right, but unfortunately it's the hardest part of the car to get right, because there's just the curves and the body angles and all that kind of stuff around the front. It's very hard, and so yeah. Okay, let's cut the scan out. I tell you what, time flies. I mean, this video is almost halfway over. That's pretty cool. I mentioned that before. I like the can, looks pretty cool. Now, this orange stripe here, I typically don't use because it's just really not applicable. I understand the thought behind it, but it's really not applicable. So I just use this piece. You guys are free to use that if you want. I don't find it very useful. It's so thin and skinny to try to put on the very front tip of the car. It just doesn't work out well for me. Let me separate these out so I'm not cutting into something I don't want to cut into. So I'll finish that in a minute. Alright, so this I'm just going to separate out here. Oops. I don't use the decal for the spoiler, so I'm just going to cut right on the edge of it, a little bit up. I can always trim it more later if I need to. Okay. So now, like I said, I'm going to separate this out. There's a lot of blank space in there. And what I'll do, here, let's see. Yeah, you see that? It's too big. It's gonna wrap around. I hate that. So I'm gonna trim the edges ever so slightly here. I was afraid of that. So I'm gonna just trim a little bit extra off the ends. And it is supposed to kind of line up here. I typically like to put the back piece on first, but it just depends. It just depends. You're trying to get both to line up. So, yeah, I'll put that on. And then once I get that on, I'll know where best to put this Toyota here to get it centered and everything. I'm right-handed, so I usually like to cut right to left. Crossed here if it curves. You know, as it curves to the right to left, I kind of like to cut that way. Okay. So these two pieces will be the most difficult to put on. And I don't say unfortunately, but I usually save the worst for last. They say save the best for last, but I like to do the easier ones first. But it just depends. Like, I hate to keep saying that, but it does just depend. Because that, you know, this has to line up here with this front, and it's difficult, right? And you get that in there as well. So which one do you put on first? This one, or this one? You know, it's something has to go on first to be the, you know, kind of that plumb line for the rest of the car. You got this thick black line in here for the side of the windshield. I don't really mess with that. I like to cut that off. We'll see how this lines up going up here. That'll be a little tricky. So there's a little bit here. Just cutting out the dead space. A little bit of dead space there. And here, I'm just cutting right along this line here for these wheel wells. Just little incremental cuts when you cut around a circle here. Same thing on this one. This little black line, I don't really use that. Okay, so cut out this wheel well. There's just this little black dot there. I don't really like those things. I know that they serve a purpose, but I don't really like them. If they're easy to remove, I remove them. Okay. Okay, let's get a couple decals on. This did say Kenseth. I painted over it. I don't know if that's necessary, because this covers it up pretty well, but just to make doubly sure that nothing shines through, because it's a pretty bright white. So get that piece on first. I know it's not centered, right? You'd like to have his name centered across this center line here, but it's alright. If I were to get it centered, I would have to lose this orange circle here, and I kind of like it, so I'll leave it on. It's close to being centered. And then I'll put this piece on, because this dictates where my 18 goes, and I put this on. I try to get it as close to the bottom as I can, because sometimes the roof number is not sized properly, like it's too big, and it just, yeah, especially on some of these Xfinity cars, for whatever reason, decal set isn't 100% sized. And I'm getting the water out because I don't want this to slide when I move on to the 18. And just in general, I try to get it out of all the decals that I put on, so it adheres more quickly. Okay, that's nice. Now obviously these lines here through the 18 don't line up with the body, but that's okay. I mean, I've kind of gotten beyond that. So I'm looking at this distance here and this distance here, so I'm going to pull it back a little bit. So that distance there and that distance there look about the same. And I'm just looking here for there's no little bubbles, there's no raised areas. I'm trying to get the bulk of the water out. and making sure it's straight. Looks pretty good. Alright, let's do this little cowl decal. Alright, so maybe what I'll do is I'll do like a part 2. I may have to do a part 3 because I take so long. But this is kind of how I start. You saw how I cut out the decals. Yeah, as I think about this, it'll take me a little bit longer to do because of this front end. So we might have 3 parts to this car. Yeah, you can see how this hangs over. I'm not going to be able to get the Toyota logo in the center because then see this word Camry here, and then the 18. I'm trying to get it all to fit on the back. So when it's wet, it kind of bends around the corners better. Or when it's really wet, I should say. And I kind of have it up high because I think that's where it's going to intersect best with the side decals, just from past experience. It's a little bit, I have it a little bit high. We'll see. If push comes to shove, I can always, I'm not going to seal it until I get all the decals on. I can always wet it and adjust it later. I don't like to do that, but it's, it is an option. I put that on it. It's pretty centered. Alright, let's see how this can looks. That's cool. And I got enough space here between here and here for it to fit too. I'll let a little bit of the can stick up on this raised area here on the side, but alright guys, this is part 1 of this 2016 Kyle Busch NOS Xfinity car. Hope this is helpful to y'all. I'll talk to you in part 2. Thanks. God bless.